What's up, everybody? It's Ronald, and I need your help. We're trying to grow the audience of Leaving the Theater, and the first step to doing that is by getting some information from you, my dedicated, loyal, and opinionated listeners. So wherever you're listening right now, please go to the show notes of this episode and click on the link that says Listener Survey. By completing this survey, you're helping to support the growth of Leaving the Theater and ohitsBigRon Studios. We use this information to determine how often we release episodes, if and when you hear ads, what types of ads you'll hear, and generally just to find out who exactly listens to the show. If we know the audience, we can grow the audience. So please complete that survey as soon as you can. Once again, it's in the show notes. It's very easy. It takes probably about an average of 6 to 8 minutes to complete. Nothing too intrusive. You will be helping the show. So please complete that survey. Thank you so much. Now let's start the show. In 1971, prisoners of the Attica Correctional Facility in upstate New York rebelled and gained control of the prison for 5 days. Their intention was to demand better living conditions for themselves, asking for humane treatment despite their incarcerated status. Attica tells their story. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm on the couch. All right, this is Ronald, and I am on the couch after watching Attica, documentary Attica, directed and produced by Stanley Nelson and Traci A. Curry. All right, so this is about the 1971 prison riot that happened in Attica, New York, upstate New York, where 70% of the inmates were Black. It happened over the course of 5 days. Prisoners took over the prison of Attica. They took 29 hostages and held them and asked for demands, which included amnesty for actually participating in the riots, but looking for better conditions. The prisoners were beaten on a regular basis, and they were given horrible foods. They did not give the Muslims religious freedoms to worships, fed them pork, did a lot of awful things to the prisoners. So the prisoners rebelled and overthrew the people at the top, and they held the prison for 5 days. It started off with negotiations going over the course of 2 days, and then one of the guards who, in the taking of the prison, one of the guards died. And because he died, it kind of changed the nature of the negotiations. And all of a sudden, all the people that were helping, there was an observing force, some neutrality people that were helping the prisoners get their demands. There was the prison administrators, including Commissioner Oswald, who was helping to negotiate. And then there was other people. He was not helping to negotiate. He was one of the prison administrators. So there was a lot of people working to try to get the demands of the prisoners met, which weren't unreasonable. So things like fair. It was none of them that I heard in the documentary were completely unreasonable. They ended up agreeing to 28 of the 30, but then one of the prison guards died, and that was probably on the third day of the rebellion. And after that, it changed the nature of the negotiations. As a result, law enforcement goes in to retake the prison. Now, I don't know if you know the story of Attica, which I did not. And I watched Summer of Soul directly before this. So I'm recording this on the same day that I've recorded Summer of Soul. And I would recommend that if you're going to watch both of these documentaries, that you watch the Attica one first, then watch Summer of Soul, because watching them backwards, even though they're in chronological order by watching them that way, is a little bit depressing, because I watched 1969, see all these black folks just hanging out, having a good time, listening to music in Harlem. And in 1971, the Attica prison riots happened. And the outcome of them is just completely insane. It's wild. Lots of juxtaposition to go from Summer to Soul to this. Now, let's talk about it as a documentary. This is one of the most documentary-y documentaries that I've seen so far in the field of documentary entries for the best documentary feature. And if I did not say it earlier, this movie, of course, was nominated for Best Documentary Feature, and it is available on Showtime. I watched it on Prime Video. I don't know if it'll be available by the time this review becomes available to everyone. This is the most documentary-y documentary I've seen. There's no narration. But there's no narration, but there's a lot of talking heads. So they get participation from everyone. They have former prisoners from Attica. They have former guards from Attica. They have former National Guard members. They have families of the hostages that were taken. And then they have people that were involved in the observer force there as well. So they have all these different voices that are in there that are providing a pretty 360-degree view of what was happening. What I like about this is they tell the whole story. And when you get to I remember there are parts of it where I was feeling like they were equating some of what was happening to the prisoners to some of what was also happening to the hostages. But as it went on, I realized what makes this such a good documentary is that they're setting these things up as separate things. They're setting these people up as separate groups. And there's a part of me that there's meant to be some sense of neutrality, and which I don't like. I don't like when they do that in documentaries, will say, like, look, these oppressed people are same as these other group of oppressed people. Because, I mean, in some cases it's okay. But in a case like this, I really didn't have sympathy for the hostage families, because in a lot of cases, those hostages were treated well by the prisoners. They were treated very well. The Muslim Brotherhood made sure they made sure that they and I think they were calling themselves the Muslim Brotherhood there, but the Muslim prisoners were making sure that nobody was hurting the hostages. They were taking care of them. They threatened to hurt them, but that was all for show, as many of the prisoners were saying. And in the end, the only hostages that died, all the hostages that were killed by law enforcement, who also killed prisoners, which is wild to me. So when you get to the end of this documentary, here you are looking at these hostages and looking at these prisoners and being like, oh, so you guys were all screwed by a bunch of people who just went in ready to kill a bunch of prisoners. You'll get to that by watching the documentary, and it's very well done how they build the tension in every scene. They go day by day. They start with day one. This is what happened. They go with day two. They talk about the conditions in the prisoners. It's laid out very well. It's very much a traditional storytelling documentary. I am surprised that this documentary doesn't have a little bit more fanfare. I don't know if it has enough momentum, because I didn't even hear about it until it was nominated. And I don't think it has enough momentum to win in the best documentary feature category of the Academy Awards, even though I would be okay with this winning. I would be 100% okay with this winning, because I think it would get a wider audience. And I think it's important for this to get a wider audience. You know, we get to the end of the documentary, and like I said, as the tension is rising, and one of the things that gets me is it's 70% black, but they have white prisoners that are also saying that were there, that are saying what happened. So they have white prisoners, they have black prisoners that are just saying, like, this is what happened. They're telling the story. And to see all of them get choked up at the same time and talk about how afraid they were when the guards were coming in to retake the prison, how scared they were, what it looked like, how nervous they were about what was going to happen next, the anxiety that they had. It just felt you can't help but feel compassion for them as it's happening. Now, I know there's some people that probably watch this and say, well, they're prisoners, whatever. Who cares? They're prisoners. Like, what are we even talking about here? But it's never that simple. You know, it's never as simple as, you know, these are bad guys. They deserve whatever happens to them. It's not that simple. And this documentary does a good job of walking down the path of humanity, because all of the prisoners that we're looking at, they're all former prisoners of Attica. So they're all out, and they're all old men. These are men that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. Even one of the people that were in the observer observation in the observer force, he is going to turn 90 soon. So these are all old folks who are telling these stories, and like listening to them tell them stories, it's just, you can't have anything but compassion for them, because what happened to them was horrible. And as they're describing the ways in which they were treated, especially when the guards came to retake the prison, I couldn't help but think about Abu Ghraib. I'm probably saying that wrong, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about. I can't help but think about the ways in which the U.S. has tortured and hurt people on other soil for whatever reason. And this is happening on American soil. They went in there, they were saying the N-word, they're yelling white power after it's over. And they were really anxious to get in there and kill some black folks, just kill as many as they can, torture them, hurt them, abuse them any way they could as retaliation for them taking the prison and asking for rights, basic human rights in a lot of cases. So it was tough to watch. It was hard. And there's ways in which at the end, they don't turn your face away from the bodies and from the carnage that happens in this prison. The ways in which they humiliated them, they don't turn the camera away from them. So I have to offer a bit of a trigger warning for people that watch this, because it's not for the faint of heart when it gets to the third act. It's just, I mean, it's horrible. Like, cause you're kind of think you're just watching something that's going to end with a negotiation. And to know that all of this carnage and problem happened because Nixon was trying to be the law and order president, and he was encouraging Governor Rockefeller to also not give in to the demands of the prisoners, even though by negotiating with the prisoners, they could have come to a peaceable end and a bunch of people would still be alive. And to know that the families of these hostages have all of their families, have had their people killed by the people who claim to be going in there to reclaim the prison and save the hostages, has to be a slap to the face to the memory of all these people who just wanted to see their families again. So it's wild. It's a good documentary. It's probably, of the three that I've seen, The Black Joy and Summer of Soul would have made that my pick. But the importance of this and the way they tell the story, I'm a sucker for, beginning, middle, and end, and especially with clever ways of weaving the story together, which I think Attica does well, with not, and it doesn't have full visuals of everything that they're doing, but they have enough, and it's put together in such a way that you really do feel like an arc forms and a full story is told here. I really appreciated that. And because of that, I give this documentary 4.5 of 5 stars, which is, I know, highest this time. And I would vote for this one. I would vote for this one for an Academy Awards so far. There's 2 others. There's Ascension, and there's one more, which I don't even know how I'm going to watch it because I can't seem to find it anywhere. But so far, this is, of the 3 I've seen, this is probably my pick. So, yeah, it's good. It's a good documentary. It's hard to watch. It's very, make sure you have something, a palate cleanser to watch after this, but definitely worth watching. I think it's important for people to see this to really get an idea of the prison industrial complex, what that means, and if it's going back as far as 1971, then, we have to assume that there's, the same type of sadism occurs in prisons all the time, all around the world, and certainly still in the United States. Even though that they have changed laws and tried to make ways in which to protect prisoners, there's still a lot of ways in which prisoners are not treated like human beings. And I think that watching a documentary like this reminds you of the ways in which human behavior can just be manipulated when you give people power. So with that, 4.5 of 5 stars, and available on Amazon Prime or Showtime if you have it. And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of ohitsBigRon Studios. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. To find out more about this show and other ohitsBigRon Studio shows, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ohitsBigRon. That's at ohitsBigRon. BIGRON. If you like this show, I host another show on the Pushkin Industries podcast network called Solvable. Check that out wherever you listen. Leaving the Theater will be back soon, but until then, I'll be here on the couch.